this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Today on the Life Science Success Podcast, my guest is Lisemby. Lee is a results-oriented operations executive in biotech and medical devices with deep experience in leveraging Lean Six Sigma methodologies to drive cost-saving initiatives and improve operational efficiency in an organization. He has a great ability to motivate and encourage and develop high-performing teams, helping individuals take their performance to the next level. So it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Lee to the podcast. Welcome, Lee.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. Can you tell listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, that's a great introduction. Appreciate that. So my career started in the U.S. Navy, went to boot camp a day before 9/11, entered boot camp September 10th, 2001, which created for a really interesting start to my military career.
I'm going to stop you there because that's an interesting one. So on the 11th, what was that day like for you in boot camp?
To be honest, we don't have TVs in boot camp, so we didn't see any of the news. And for a bit, a lot of us thought that it was just part of boot camp. Like they came in the next morning yelling and screaming at us, "We're going to war." And a lot of us like, yeah. Like, this is this drill instructors getting in our heads. Then we started getting messages from our mail calls came in, and we saw pictures from newspaper articles. And then I went to the dentist like a week after, and they had TVs in the waiting room. That's the first time I saw all the 9/11 stuff was on TV a week later. So it was chaotic. There was a few people that took it pretty hard, and definitely created some people to leave boot camp because you entered in a time where it was a time of peace for a long time, and the military wasn't really a risk of going to war. Then all of a sudden, that's exactly what we're doing. We're about to go to war. I took it, ran with it. It was what it was. But
wow, what a shock! Thank you for your service, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So the first 4 years, I was an aircraft mechanic. I served in San Diego and Virginia Beach. And then after that, I was a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I checked in Oceana, and they asked me if I was interested in doing this Lean Six Sigma training. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I came back, and my master chief asked me what I thought. And I said, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think we definitely need it here. And continuous improvement. We waste a lot of money at that time, probably still do some ways. So I did that full time for 4 years and got out. And then I went from there to NASA, worked at NASA as an engineer for several years. And then Elon Musk decided SpaceX should take over manned space flight. So I had to find another job. Came back home from Lubbock, Texas originally. And that's where I'm at now. So I came back, got a job in continuous improvement, and I worked my way up into a med device company. Became a director of operations there. Did that for 8 years, and currently I'm VP of operations for Revar Labs, which is in the biotech space.
Very nice. Yeah, so I guess a couple of interesting questions here. So in terms of your NASA experience, it's interesting to me because whenever I grew up as a kid, I ran around with an Apollo rocket model all the time as a kid. And I think there were very few times that I didn't have that model with me as I grew up. But whenever you think about the advancement of space, as I continued through from high school to college, it was a Challenger space shuttle exploded my senior year in high school. And then after that, you just saw things just continue to, be reduced. But at the same time, it's one of the places that I still think is a marquee location for the United States is the to work at NASA. It seems like a real dream.
Yeah, it's a fun job. I tell you, I'd still be there today if it wasn't for the changes that were made at that time. But I tell you, it's exciting. There's always something like it suited me very well. I have a little bit of a ADHD issue with sitting down behind a desk too long, and NASA in the military too. You're always going, so it's constant, and you're working on a project, but you're going from building to building to building and meeting with people and checking on things. It was a lot of fun. I loved it there. It's there's still people there today that I worked with that communicate with from time to time, and it's a great organization.
Great. And then, so then you make the leap to med device and biotech. I also didn't know that there were many med device or biotech companies in Lubbock. So is there a big industry?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until I got the job, or until I was interviewing for the job. But what happened was it's in the dental devices, and it was a dentist that was he was grafting a socket before he put implants in back in the 90s. And it was one of the first people to do it, and had a lot of information, did a lot of studying, very intelligent person. And the product he was using, the guy was out of Colorado and he was retiring. And he said, "Hey, you're one of my few customers. Do you want to buy this product?" So him and his brother jumped in the truck and loaded the equipment up in the back of his truck and brought it back to Lubbock and started making this product out of the back of the dental office for the first few years. And that one product grew into 422 products by the time I left in October. Yeah, it's one of a kind. I think we're the only one in West Texas, I believe. There's one other in San Angelo, which is about 3 hours away, but Johnson & Johnson facility down there.
Yeah, I live in Colorado. It surprised me being there, just seeing how many biotech companies are there. And it seems like a lot of ways there are a lot of people that aren't in San Francisco, but they are in Boulder, Colorado or Denver, Colorado. So I have no idea if there are other hubs similar to that, but it seems like the United States has a lot going on with biotech.
Yeah.
So how have you used your Six Sigma experience and some of the things that you've done? Do you have any stories that you're able to share in terms of how you've leveraged your Six Sigma capabilities, and where is it benefited you most?
I started in the military. I got out in 2009, which we're going through a recession, and I had a secure, stable job with the U.S. Navy, and I had 2 kids back to back. They were 1 and 2 years old, and I knew if I stayed in the Navy, I was going to have to go back to sea duty, which would mean 3 years on the ship. I wouldn't be able to see my kids for whatever, first game, first, whatever it might have been, all those firsts you have at that age. And so I wanted to get out because I also didn't want to leave my wife on the East Coast by herself with 2 kids while I deployed. But it's 2009, jobs were hard to get in 2009. And so I decided I was going to just become a consultant. And because the consultants who trained us would hire me, and the job in NASA came up, so I took that instead. But so that spurred me into a career. There's a lot of career opportunities. Also, the Six Sigma black belt is what landed me the job at Osteogenic at the director of operations. They were looking for a black belt, and there happened to be no black belts in Lubbock, Texas, I guess, that fit the job description. So I was one of the few. So it's besides this career, it's helped a lot. Like, we've done a lot of good work in every company I've been in, not only improving quality, improving efficiency, cutting costs without cutting quality, which has been a big piece of that in the life science industry. I can't even name it, but it's helped the culture as well, like just creating that culture of continuous improvement, and which auditors love. Every time auditor comes in, seems like one of the bright spots of the audit is, hey, let's see what you've been doing with your lean Kaizens or your whatever continuous improvement tool we're using at that time. And they dig through all that and ends up, taking 2 or 3 hours of their time, and they leave happy. So they see that we're actually trying to get in front of problems and not just be reactive. We're being very proactive with our approach in operations.
Very good. And then in terms of getting started with a company, whenever you're looking at where to start implementing Six Sigma, I know I've talked to quite a few companies in the industry who want to know, where do I start with Lean, or where do I start with Six Sigma? Do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah, for the company, the first thing we do is go through and we map out the processes, do a value stream map, and figure out all the pain points. Then we identify pieces that we can do Kaizen events, do like these 5-day events where we can totally change or fix that problem. And also, first thing I do is talk to like the CEO or the president, and I say, hey, what's keeping you up at night? What can we help you with? If we could fix one thing right now, what would it be? And you find those things pretty quick because we all have them. Every CEO is just stressing over one specific issue, and mostly it's time is quality. That's where we've done the most work, is improving yields, decreasing scrap, and improving all those KPIs that they're getting graded by. You go down to the department levels, the department heads, they're being judged by their numbers at some level. What numbers are you not meeting? What KPIs are you not hitting? And help them with that. And all of a sudden you become this this program that people would fight in the beginning because it's somewhat of a change initiative and people don't change, to a program that people embrace. And that's where I start in a company, in a personal level or a job level. We got to start with the training. We have to get people trained. It's a new concept. Some of it is pretty easy to understand. Other pieces of it, more than the Six Sigma side, is somewhat difficult. And so we just introduce them to it and tell them what we're doing and how we're doing it. We're not taking anyone's jobs. And we've never taken one job from anyone. That's what a lot of people are afraid of. We're going to come in and take their jobs away. And we just make their jobs more efficient and easier, and they don't have to be stressed as much.
Yeah, it's one of the first cautions that I normally warn people about with things like process improvement is the first time that you use it to reduce a bunch of jobs, it'll be the last time that you have a change or a process improvement event, because nobody's going to continue to participate in that if you're going to continue to eliminate jobs. But what I know through my sort of lean journey was we could take and maybe we eliminate portions of the work. But the benefit was that most of the things that we were eliminating were the things that people didn't want to do anyway. They could see all the waste. They didn't want to, waste their time either. And so it was a great benefit to be able to do that and then restructure their job in a way where every day is value added, or every day is mostly value added, at least. Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of getting started on the journey, and you mentioned value stream mapping, can you describe one of the events that you would have had that came out of value stream map before?
Yeah. So my first day, the company's called X, a semiconductor plant here in Lubbock. It's an old TI plant that a German company came in and bought, and they just do semiconductors. They don't do the other pieces that TI did there. So the fab itself, the first 2 months I was there, all I did was follow a product, one wafer around the whole fab. It took 30 to 45 days. I don't remember how long. And I documented all the steps, all the times, all the issues. I talked to every operator. I was like, hey, what's your issue right here? What's keeping this lot in queue? Why aren't we working on this? And I looked at all the batch operations, like why don't we have to batch everything at this point? And I just went through the whole entire process. Took me 2 months. I put this value stream map together, and I printed it out, and it was so big. I took the whole conference room wall, and I don't remember how many steps it was. It was thousands of steps it took to get one wafer from the silicon carbide to the customer's hands. And then we put together a steering committee team, and we went through and we just identified, that, hey, this time right here, it's sit here for 2 days. Like, let's look at this. Or, all this scrap right here, these yields are terrible here. Like, let's look at that. So we just pinpoint all these different areas where either it was held up, or there was a big scrap event, or the yields were bad, or whatever it might have been, and just identify what would be a good Kaizen event. And we started just breaking it down in Kaizen events. We didn't do Kaizens for everything. Just a lot of things we can just do it.
Go fix it.
Yeah, go fix it. Yeah, exactly. I just don't do that anymore. So identify those areas as well. But it really, I'm glad I did it. A lot of people say I don't want to spend 2 months walking around following a wafer through a semiconductor fab, but you see a lot of stuff. And not only do you see stuff, you hear stuff. When those operators start seeing you every day and they start trusting you, day one, you got a notebook or clipboard, and they're not talking to you. They're hiding. Day 30, they're talking to you. They're telling you all the stuff that they don't like about their job. So it was interesting.
Yeah, at least for me, the area that a lot of people oftentimes want to jump to is that area to be able to improve. They could see it just as much as anybody else. And I certainly have used things like video cameras to see, where do people pause? Where do they stop? Where does the inventory actually pile up over and over again? And to me, it applies from semiconductors, as you said earlier, through the Navy, but also in life sciences as well. I could definitely see that it could be applicable here as well. In your current role, what are you focusing on most now?
Yeah, right now I'm more in the quality and regulatory space, and that transition from the Navy, NASA, semiconductors to life sciences is a lot of carryover in all those. I mean, the aerospace and life science, the regulatory piece is very similar, and the rigor we go through and the quality systems, the rigor we have to go through, the regulatory piece. I mean, a lot of it's similar. And so right now I have the most experience in my current company in the quality and regulatory side of things. I'm still doing operations, supply chain, but we're a startup. Revar Labs is a startup company, and we're trying to get product to market. So I'm doing all the FDA requirements to get the product through the EUA process, building the quality systems so we can have robust quality systems to support commercialization. So those are those key issues I'm focused on at the moment.
Yeah, and then I would imagine, I believe that you're working on a drug, right, at Revar Labs. Is that correct?
No, diagnostics. So we're in COVID
Okay.
diagnostics. Yeah.
Okay.
COVID and viral diagnostics.
All right. And then in terms of that, there's certainly a lot of testing and regulatory needs throughout the process. Have you seen things just continue to evolve in the company? Or I would imagine you probably had to start from scratch.
Yeah, we started from scratch. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It changes day to day with the science. Luckily, I'm not having to do the R&D on our products because those guys, bless their hearts, they're in there every day in the lab. It's like a roller coaster for them. One day it's high, one day it's low. It's just the way it is in biotech. It's luckily I'm on the outside looking in and just trying to support them best I can. And it is a day-to-day process and getting this to the FDA.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I admire most about biotech companies is that I feel like, and maybe this is across the industries, I haven't worked much outside of healthcare, but across the entire field of biotech, I feel like you have to be nimble and able to pivot quite a bit. And because maybe in your case, it sounds like you guys are developing a diagnostic and they're trying to adjust to changing conditions and things like that. Being nimble and having a team and a quality system that supports that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because no one likes doing quality, it seems like. I don't know why, but my personality just lends towards it. And I have no idea why. So I'm taking up the pieces as they're going through it because they don't want to, documentation and record keeping and all of that is, a scientist doesn't really like doing all that. So yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just critical to have somebody that does enjoy those aspects as well. I would say I like a lot of the process of quality. I don't like the constraints. So to me, it's finding a way with your quality system to work with your quality system within the regulations and things like that is what I enjoy. But I know there are people that like the structure and they like the rigor that the constraints bring, and that doesn't lend to my personality all that well. Having the ability to use a quality system to your benefit seems to me like the greatest place to be.
I think that's where my Lean Six Sigma training comes in, because it doesn't have to be constraining. It doesn't have to be restricting. The quality system doesn't. A lot of people, they over document themselves. They have too many documents. They have too much rigor, and that gets you in the bad spot. I think you got to be fluid with your quality system and how you approach it, especially in a startup. But I don't know, maybe even in a mature quality system. It seems like the more mature a quality system is, the more documents it has, the more SOPs, the more records, the more everything. You come in a problem, and what's the first thing you do? You write an SOP around it. You have a CAPA, and what's the outcome of a CAPA? We've got to revise that SOP or create another record. Do this. Those are always the outputs. And so before long, you have a mountain of documents you got to maintain and control. So there's give and takes.
Yeah, I know I've taught a few people things like root cause analysis. And one of the things that I've come back to oftentimes in the root cause analysis training is just, if you've ended on training is the issue, you probably haven't found the issue yet.
Many times.
Yeah, training is a great fallback, I think, for everybody to leap to, hey, look, we're going to implement training and that's going to solve this from ever happening again. But from Lean, oftentimes we would get asked anyway, but how do you error proof this? And that leads you to a different solution, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, but how many times do you see the results of a CAPA being training? It seems every time I've seen a CAPA, it seems like training's been a part of it, the output of it.
Yeah. And I think it's fine to have that as a part of the CAPA. If you have to train somebody, it's fine. But also, my challenge to most teams is, how do you not end on that? The whole problem, let's just take a simple example. If the whole problem is the screw is backing out, sure, you could say it's training that's causing that issue. Maybe somebody didn't tighten the screw tight enough originally, or maybe they didn't check it whenever they did preventive maintenance or whatever. But you could also ask, could you put Loctite on it? Is there a torque wrench involved? Is there, a spec that should be applied? I don't know. There are lots of ways to back your way into things other than just training. That's where I would challenge teams to try and land.
Well, yeah, and it takes more time to do the CAPA. You got a quality manager who's swamped, who's processing documents day in, day out, who is trying to just knock this CAPA out. I mean, I'm not saying bad things about quality managers because I greatly respect them, but I think that's where Lean Six Sigma comes in again. Like if you had a continuous improvement team, say, hey, look at this, go figure out the root cause of why this is happening, and maybe a supplier issue, maybe that screw is just defect, like we're talking about with specs. Maybe the specs aren't right. Maybe you need to go look at qualifying a new supplier. But when you just get busy and you just, I'm totally with you on that. And I think there's definitely more some of these can do.
Yeah, it's a real opportunity out there, and a real opportunity, I think, to continue to apply Lean and Six Sigma across life sciences and really look at how do you use that to your advantage. Because if you solve a problem once and for all, and you never have to come back to that same problem, it for sure will save the company money in the end of the day as well. So,
absolutely. And a lot of people don't see that. We fight fires every day. And to get that fire to go away and never come back again, how valuable is that? Because, solving the root cause is always my go-to if we can. And sometimes it's hard to get there. Sometimes it takes a full-blown Kaizen to solve that root cause. Or sometimes it's a Six Sigma project. But it's always worth the investment you put into it in the beginning to solve it.
Yeah. So one last question on Lean and Six Sigma, and then we'll switch to the final three questions here. So in terms of Lean and Six Sigma, which one do you go to more and why?
Lean for sure. And the reason, because people understand it, it's common sense. I did a lot of training in the military with Lean Six Sigma. And one day, I always have the same question at the end of the day or end of the Lean segment. Someone would say, man, this is common sense. I was like, yeah, but common sense isn't that common. Like,
right.
You think this is common sense, but we're not seeing this in action every day in, day out. This is just a systematic way of applying common sense to what we're doing. And so any level, any type of employee can understand Lean. Six Sigma, it gets into a lot of statistics and a lot of data, and it's more of a project where it takes almost an engineer type person to go work it, because it's a lot of just moving pieces and a lot of just data-driven type of work. And it takes longer. It takes someone 3 months to do, at a minimum, really, to do a Six Sigma project, or a Kaizen project, or a Lean project. We can knock that out in 3 days, some days, sometimes. I do use some Six Sigma and Kaizens as well when needed. It's just a toolbox. This toolbox is a massive toolbox of tools we can pull from depending on the problem. And not every tool fixes every problem, so you got to plug and play as you need.
Yeah. What's that saying? When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But in the case of Six Sigma, at least my general feeling is that, because I was at GE for 17 years, so I was there through the early stages of Jack Welch, through the start of when Jeff Emmelt was there. And for me, Six Sigma was great because it would allow us to go deep in a specific topic, but you would dig in one department or one problem extremely deep. If there were things upstream or downstream that were impacting the project, oftentimes we wouldn't deal with those in Six Sigma. And that's where it really has power. It just cuts across everything. Like you said, for your 30 days of watching a wafer being built, I could only envision how many different maybe parts of the process you got to see in that time period, right? Up and downstream.
That's a good point too. Lean stretches from raw materials to finished good, and everything in between. And also even the customer acceptance. But Six Sigma, so this one time I had a co-instructor in the military who would say the Lean goes a mile wide and an inch deep. Six Sigma goes an inch wide and a mile deep. Which, it's a good analogy. I don't typically agree with it, but it makes sense. Like, Six Sigma focuses on one specific area and it drills down those really hard problems that no one can figure out a solution for. That's a great Six Sigma project. A process improvement event is a good Lean Kaizen event.
Yeah, for sure. We're at the point in the show where I generally ask each guest 3 questions. So what inspires you?
Yeah, it's several things. It's hard to pick one. Can I answer this in a 2-part question or 2-part answer? Sure. I think people achieving their goals, whether it's one of my kids or an employee of mine, that inspires me. I'll give you a quick story. My son loves basketball. He works his tail off. He's pretty good. He's not great anyway, but he puts in hours and hours, 3 or 4 hours a day. We got to get this kid to go to bed at night just because he wants to be out there working on, doing drills. And he got in a game a few years ago, or 3 years ago, I think now, and it was the final game of a tournament, and they were down by 1, and he was in the game, got the final shot, and made it to win the game. That kind of stuff just chokes me up, like more than anything in the world. And no, the same goes with employees. Like employees who I mentor, they're asking, what can I do to move up in the company? What can I do to get this job? Or what can I do to whatever it might be at that time they want to do in their careers? And you say, all right, here's a plan. Let's put together a plan. And they go work their tails off. They go do night school. They're doing, all these certifications. Any spare moment they have, they're doing something to progress their career. And they achieve that goal. That's the same thing. It inspires me. The second thing that inspires me is really great leadership. Like I am so inspired by great leadership. If you look at my Audible library, half my books are over leadership of some sort, whether it's Jocko Willick's with the Navy SEALs or Simon Sinek, some of his books, and all those books, and this seeing stories about personal triumphs, but triumphs with leaders in these growing companies. And Jack Welch is another great one. You mentioned him a minute ago. I'm inspired by great leadership. So those 2 things, is seeing people succeed and watching leaders, do great things.
Yeah, to me, it's the same. I definitely, it's one of the reasons why I started the podcast as well, just to talk to leaders like yourself, because to me, we learn from each other in one way or the other. And whether it's through books or conversations, it's a great benefit to get to talk to people that are leaders and hear their experiences as well. What concerns you?
I think this division right now in the world, I just see from my time on this earth, I just see from as a kid till now how just divided we've become. And it didn't seem that bad when I was younger. Maybe I didn't realize it, didn't notice it. But I just see today is the division is killing us as a country, and just worldwide. I feel like it's killing us. And I don't know how we come together and be more united, but I think we have to. I'm a big team guy. Like everywhere I've been, I like to build teams. I like to motivate teams. I like to accomplish great things with great teams. And right now, if you look at our country, we're not a great team, and that concerns me. And I think there's certain things that play there that I won't get into on this podcast, but I think we have to get over it. We have to come together and unite as one.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that's needed for sure in our country right now. And what excites you?
I think this is a great opportunity right now. And I think it's a kind of a catch-22. It's a double-edged sword with the COVID issue and all the money that the government's pumping into the economy. We're going to debt, which that concerns me again, that history repeats itself. So there's some sort of concern that we may be going to a Great Depression, number 2. But what excites me right now is that there's a lot of opportunity. Look around, people cannot find help. I can't find someone to cut my grass. I can't find someone to do like small jobs because nobody wants to work because there's incentives to stay home right now. And I think that's creating a ton of opportunity. And it starts with those skilled level jobs, but it works all the way up to, management, leadership jobs, and also just entrepreneurs. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur right now because it's just a lot of stuff you can do to impact the world.
I mean, as somebody that started a consulting firm in the midst of the pandemic, yes, I completely agree with you. I think that there's tons of opportunity, and it's a great time for growth. And you can either grow your way into the situation that we're in right now, or you could decide to shrink. And I'd much rather focus on the growth and sort of the possibilities of what can be.
Yeah, change brings lots of opportunities, and I think we're seeing it already. And I'm really excited about what you're doing here. This is great. This podcast is educating people on it. I think we're going to see people either embrace a change or not. And those that do, I think are going to have unlimited potential.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lee Lisemby, for being on the podcast today. I greatly appreciate you being a guest and for spending time with me. Thanks a lot for being here.
All right. Thank you, Don. Appreciate you having me on.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.